Hello, everyone. Welcome to Change and Thrive. I'm your host, Dr. Wendy Heckelman, founder and CEO of WLH Consulting and Learning Solutions. Thank you for tuning in. Please be sure to subscribe and select the notification bell. That way, you'll never miss an episode. As we launch this podcast, I want to talk about successfully driving change and the role of a transition leader. Life changes right before our eyes, and 2020 has proved this to us in ways that we could never have imagined. My new show was inspired by the recent book I published, Change and Thrive, A Modern Guide to Change Leadership. When this book was written, it was to share an approach and tips to successfully lead through change and build change leadership capabilities. However, in March, the world was challenged like never before. We were faced with a pandemic, had staggering rates of unemployment and economic hardship, and a real push for social justice. Given that these are very trying and challenging times, many organizations and leaders are now re-examining their businesses and their strategies and are likely to undertake fundamental change. So in our first episode, I want to talk about change and what makes change initiatives successful and the critical role of a transition leader. So let's start with some basic facts. Would you believe that 70% of all large-scale change initiatives fail? And failure is defined as not realizing the intended results of a strategy. So most of the research I've done over the last 25 years is to examine what do the 30% who are successful do? What is unique and what characteristics or processes do they put in place? So let me share those with you for a few minutes. And the first is organizations that are part of the 30% Success Club, as I like to call it, address change on 3 levels: organizationally, at the team level, and at the individual level. And at the organizational level, they define and communicate the vision and strategy, they build commitment to it, and they ensure reward and recognition structures align with intended results. At the team level, they translate strategic goals to team responsibilities, address the impact of the changes to work and the team, and they strive and work deliberately to build high-performing teams. And at the individual level, they address me issues that individuals have as they undergo change. They clarify roles and responsibilities, and they reward and recognize and reinforce desired behaviors and values. Another component of the 30% Success Club is they identify and proactively manage the biggest risks that jeopardize their business during the transition process. They make sure that they've identified what is most critical and put mitigation strategies in place to guide them. The third characteristic of this prestigious club is they monitor progress against transition plans and they recalibrate quickly. They just don't leave it to chance. They are deliberate and they follow up and make sure that they fix what is not tracking in the way they need to. And the fourth characteristic of the club is they equip their leaders to lead the change by managing others through the transition. And I'm using the word transition deliberately because we're really going to talk about the role of a transition leader. But first, let me start by making a distinction. Change is an event. It happens outside of us, and it is tangible and concrete. A change can be your organization has decided to transform. It's decided to revisit its go-to-market strategy. Change can also be the coronavirus and the pandemic. That was thrust upon us and had us change policies and procedures and the way in which we worked. But here's the catch. Change is done to you. Transition is our response to the event. It happens inside of us. It's intangible and it's different for everybody. Some people go through transition much easier than others. There's a noted expert, William Bridges, and many years ago, he published what was known as the transition cycle. And what he really talks about is that when change occurs, there's a period called endings, where people need to let go of something stable, known, and dependable. And they have emotions attached to that. And as they work through those emotions of uncertainty and they start to explore, they move into a neutral zone where they start to build a little bit of confidence. And then hopefully they move very quickly into the new beginnings, which allows them to have confidence and commitment and plunge into something that is new and new ways of working. But this just doesn't happen by chance. What we really know, this is where transition leadership comes into play. A transition leader has change agility, personally, where they have balance, speed, and flexibility. And they also have the ability to understand the power of working with their teams and leading and inspiring. Rosalind Carter is quoted by saying, "A leader takes people where they want to grow. A great leader takes people where they don't necessarily want to go, but ought to be." So I want to talk a little bit about a transition leader. A transition leader takes a look first at himself or herself and figures out what they need to do and how do they need to change. And then they examine their team and individuals and determine where their team is, as well as the individual members on their team, and figure out what the gaps are, and then help them close those gaps so they can move through this process of transition. This transition leader is leading on steroids. I want to give you an example. I had the privilege to work with an emerging biotech, and there was this head of sales and marketing, and he was an incredible leader. And they were going through, this organization was about to embark on fundamental change. They were going to reorganize the way in which they work. They were moving to regional groups. They were mixing sales and marketing and all the different other customer-facing roles. But as a result of moving to this structure, there were going to be all types of challenges. New teams, new leaders, new requirements. Well, this leader embraced the challenge. He was up to the task. And what he did is he gathered a team together of trusted advisors, and they did exactly what that 30% club does. First, he took a look at how these changes would impact the organization, the teams and individuals, and put plans around that. He then identified as many risks that were within their control and put strategies to close those risks. And they put hard check marks of points in time to recalibrate. But then this very smart leader that I was privileged to support said to me, "Well, what about our leaders? How, Wendy, are we going to train them to become great transition leaders? And what are those characteristics?" The characteristics of the ability to anticipate what's going to happen, to lead and inspire their teams, and to have the patience to work with individuals and guide them. So what we did is we had a session and started to really build the skills and capabilities of these leaders. What I would say, though, when I reflect back, is the sooner that you embrace change and go through the transition process, you can then get on the other side of this. As we look to close out today's podcast, I'd like to summarize with a few key points. The first is the very essence of change is that it can happen quickly, right before your eyes. By its nature, change is disruptive and can throw even the most skilled leaders off balance. Fortunately, with proper planning and preparation, leaders can not only handle change, but can thrive during change. If you want to learn more about change leadership, check out my new book, Change and Thrive, A Modern Approach to Change Leadership. Its focus is to equip leaders to successfully guide others through transition. If you're an organization needing some support with equipping your leaders with better transition leadership capabilities, we offer learning solutions that can be delivered virtually. Thank you very much for tuning in today. And don't forget to subscribe. That way you'll never miss an episode. And if you're on social media platforms, WLH Consulting. Have a terrific day. And I'm Dr. Wendy Heckelman. And thanks again for tuning in.